Hey guys, Chris from Propel here, and I'm really excited to be showing you the new Tern GSD. So we had this opportunity to check this bike out before most other places because we happen to be not too far from Tern in North America, which is in Lakewood. We're in Long Beach, just neighboring cities here. This particular one is the Tern GSD S00 LX, but it's available in a bunch of different models. I'm going to go through those different models and just tell you what's updated about this bike, just a little bit about the GSD overall. They took a lot of feedback from different users. They really listened to the riders and improved the bikes based on what people are really looking for. And I think a lot of people are very pleased with what they did here. Since the introduction of the GSD in 2017 by Tern, it's been a real hit. They've distributed this product in many different markets throughout the world, and everywhere it's distributed, it's very popular. We've been carrying this in our New York store since the early days in 2017, and we've been carrying it in our Long Beach store now as well. For New York, it's an excellent bike because it's relatively compact, but you can still carry kids. You can put it on an elevator. There's lots of things you can do with it, and it's relatively low price compared to some of the other cargo bikes on the market. So I think it makes it as like a good bike for many different users. Actually, Tara behind the camera, she rides a GSD herself. She has the GSD S10. Yeah, just overall, it's just one of those bikes that a lot of people, when they're thinking about a cargo bike or they're thinking about a bike that can do more, it's on the high up in people's consideration. They've improved upon that current version of the GSD by making some changes that a lot of people have been requesting, and it's just with the natural iteration of things, they've made some changes. So one of the big changes is a different motor. So currently the GSD has a Generation 2 Bosch motor. This one has the Generation 4 Bosch motor, more specifically the cargo line motor, and that's carried throughout the full line of GSD models. So they all have the Bosch cargo line motor, 85 Newton meters of torque. So quite a bit of torque there, really powerful, really a nice smooth ride, and I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that feature. Some other details that they changed: they updated the frame a little bit. They actually reinforced some of the tubing in the frame. I mean, the frame was already super stiff, but they improved further on that to make it even stiffer and actually reinforce some of the internal tubing. They've also updated the frame to include a suspension fork. The previous version just had the standard rigid fork, but those wide tires, usually those provide a good amount of suspension. But now with the suspension fork on the models above the S10, so the S10 LX, the GSD S00 LX, and the R14 LX will also include a suspension seat post, which is a slight change, which is something that's included standard. It's always available as an upgrade for the other GSDs, but this is a standard feature on some of their more premium models now. We'll dive into these details a little bit deeper in just a moment, but I just want to give you a general overview of the updates that happened for this bike. There's a new kickstand that also has a remote control, so when you deploy the kickstand, it locks in place, and then you can push a switch on the handlebars to unlock it and push the bike along, which is a pretty cool feature. Some other little details change with the attachment points, some new accessories. You have a new clubhouse, which can now accommodate 2 child seats, where previously it was kind of a challenging thing to do. So that's a really nice feature. The bike is slightly longer by about 6 centimeters, so not too much, but it's just slightly bigger and a little bit more cargo capacity in that regard. Then some different drivetrain options. A lot of people are really excited about the belt option that is available now. Previously was not available. So you can get that lower maintenance option with the belt on the NVOLO or the R14 roll-off version. Another update that they've included is a new headlight that also has a high beam. It's 700 lumens, so pretty powerful light with the high beam. And then brake lights as well, which are going to be available on the LX versions. The standard version is going to have the standard brakes without the brake lights. So, costs a little bit more for that, but something to consider. And the last detail I think I want to mention before we dive into everything else here is that the stem is slightly taller, and that has to do with just the suspension fork and the way the frame and the head tube is slightly different. So, and I think this is probably a good time just to talk a little bit about the geometry, because that's changed just a little bit as well, where the seat tube is a little bit slacker, as in it kind of leans back a little bit further. This is pretty nice on a cargo bike because when you're sharing different rider heights, as the seat goes up, it goes back, so then you end up having more space. And one of the things that sometimes people were concerned about previously is taller riders, they didn't feel as comfortable, but this you'll find it even more comfortable if you're a taller rider, so it's something to appreciate there. But also having this slack seat tube also gives you the benefit that when you're sitting on the saddle, it's a little easier to put your feet on the ground because of the way you're going to still get a full extension of your leg, but actually the distance straight to the ground is shorter just by nature of the way a triangle works. Some other details with just like the overall ergonomics of the bike. The stem and handlebars are pretty much the same. You have that nice sweep back here. You have the fully adjustable andro stem, so you can push it forward if you want that more sporty position, or you can pull it back further if you want that more upright position. The seat post and saddle has some nice improvements. So these levers actually have changed a little bit. That this brass part, it makes this action on here a little bit smoother, and we have longer levers, so it makes it a little bit easier to open up. You have this minimum insertion point, so this is the highest on the lower part of the telescoping seat post, but then you can go up higher on the top portion, and then you have the minimum insertion point here. At this point, this is very high. I mean, this is probably going to be a rider that's maybe 6'6", I don't know. I mean, they say it goes up to 6'5", it really depends on your inseam, I guess, but that's pretty tall. You have the new Cane Creek Thudbuster seat post. It's the short travel version, and you have this swappable elastomer here. You can change based on your body weight and how stiff you want the seat post to be. And then you have this new saddle, a little bit larger handle on the rear of it. This is a saddle made by Velo specifically for the Tern GSD, and it's really nice, comfortable. It's relatively wide, but you can still sit in a pretty sporty position and be comfortable on it. But the GSD is just a great all-round bike. It just fits so many different user types, whether you're a family that wants to carry several kids, or maybe a larger kid or a small adult. It's also great for businesses. Sometimes businesses want to put different boxes, do deliveries, or, people just wanted to carry all sorts of stuff, grocery shopping or whatever the case may be. The new GSD is available in several different options. You can get the standard S10 version, which is the base model, available in matte black for $4,600. That bike comes standard with a 400 watt-hour battery and the Dior 10-speed derailleur with the standard lights, and it doesn't have the optional brake lights. The GSD S10-LX version is available in the Dragon Fruit and School Bus color, and that one has the same Dior 10-speed derailleur, but it comes standard with a 500 watt-hour battery and the upgraded brake lights and headlight on that one. The S00 LX version, which we tested today, is the Rhino gray color, but it's also available in the very popular Beetle blue color for $6,000. Now keep in mind there's many updates on this model from the previous version to include the belt drive and the new motor and brake lights, etc. So that's where you get that slight difference in price from the $5,000 up to the $6,000 for that new S00 LX version. And their top spec version is the GSD R14. That model is $8,400. It comes in the forge gray color, and it comes standard with two 500 watt-hour batteries, the roll-off electronically shifted hub system with the belt drive, as well as the upgraded lighting front and rear, the brake lights, the high beam, low beam, etc. That's a really nice option if you want the widest range of gears, just a really robust system and something that's very low maintenance, but still very sporty and fun. But overall, I think I'd be happy with any of these models, and I can gladly recommend any of them. It's one of the most versatile bikes that we offer in the shop, and we're really excited about the updates that they made. So the tire in the front is a Schwalbe Big Bend Plus 20 by 2.15. This is a nice puncture resistant tire. It's a balloon tire, so you can run it at a lower pressure, adds to the comfort, and it has pretty good tread on it. It's capable on-road, some light off-road. We actually riding off-road a little bit before. You can see we got a little dirt still on here, but some other changes, we have a suspension fork. So the suspension fork up front, it's a coil spring fork, so that means you can adjust the suspension by turning this knob on the non-drive side of the fork. That's going to tighten the coil spring, tighten the preload, which is going to make it a little bit stiffer. You do have the optional lockout on here. And I should note that the tire in the back, similar to the previous version, is the Supermoto X. The reason why they do a Supermoto X in the back, which is a 2.4 and a 2.15 in the front, is in order to be able to accommodate the fender and the suspension fork. That's the setup. I mean, still has the same boost spacing on the front hub, which is really generally made for mountain biking, but they adopted this style specifically for this bike because it makes a lot of sense. It's just stronger, stiffer, basically any accommodations they could make to make the bike heavier duty. They kind of went in that direction, which I really respect. So through axle up front, which uses an Allen key to remove that there. Also included is this Abus Shield 5650 front cafe lock or frame lock, whatever you want to call it, which will lock the front wheel. So you can just turn this key here and you could lock the wheel in place. Should also note that you can attach a chain to this as well. Now this is not a very high security measure, but it's a nice thing if you're at a park or something like that, you just want the bike to be immobilized. Since the bags are on the bike and we have these side skirts, I want to show you the drivetrain. I think the easiest way is to use the standing feature. So we'll just pick the bike up and we can get a better look at the drivetrain this way. So looking at the underside, we could get a better view at the drivetrain here. Now let's get the kickstand out of the way. This is pretty cool to be able to check that out as well. It's really pretty heavy duty and robust, and can't see it here, but the locking mechanism, gets that locked in place really nicely, and I appreciate that. So this is the S00, so it's the NVOLO version, but set up with the Gates carbon belt drive. So really nice setup here, and I'll show you in just a second. There's also a tensioner on here to keep that belt taut as well. So this is a continually variable transmission, so you can really dial in your cadence exactly how you want it, and it's the cargo line, so it's just really robust and it's made to be very heavy duty. You can see while we're looking under here, you can also see these lower foot rails. Now generally for the older version or the generation 1 of the GSD, this was kind of an add-on option. They had what's called the Sidekick lower deck, and that was a bolt-on option. Now this is standard, so just out of the box you have these side skirts with this lower deck, and you could just set it up to carry kids with really minimal additions. This one happens to have the extensions on here, maybe if you were carrying larger kids or an adult, or you wanted it just to be able to carry a bit more cargo or strap things to. Having these extensions on here is nice. So it's a 1 bolt up here, 2 bolts in the rear. This is one of the couple of new accessories that are available for the new GSD. Another one is the clubhouse as well, which we'll show in a minute, but this one won't be retrofittable to the Gen 1 GSD, but the new clubhouse will be, which is nice. One of the other great features about the GSD is all the different options that are available to add on, so you can configure the bike to whatever your needs might be. This bike happens to have some add-ons on it at the moment, but I should note that they are not included. So one of them is the front hauler rack, which is added on. It has the new Clubhouse Plus, which has some new adaptations. It has the ability to carry 2 child seats on the inside, so it's a little bit longer. The cargo hold 52 panniers are also added to this bike. So this is kind of showcasing all the new accessories that previously haven't covered or just being introduced with this bike, and they should also be available around the same time frame, the end of this year, early next year. But really excited about these additions and everything that Tern has to offer in this regard. Another nice update to the drivetrain is this new chain guard, or kind of semi-integrated chain case. It's almost like a chain case, as in it's like fully enclosed, but it's more of a chain guard, but it's custom. It keeps everything pretty well protected. It keeps your kids' feet protected if they're sitting on the back. It also includes these side skirts, which is a really nice update as well. So this one has the belt drive on it, but you'll have the same setup with the chain and the same setup on the R14, which also has the belt as well. Now we also have this pulley wheel. You can't really see it in here, but that keeps that belt properly taut there, which is nice. And you also have that same pulley wheel for the chain version, and it just kind of keeps the chain properly taut, and so it's not kind of bouncing around inside here or anything like that. Really powerful motor, actually one of the most powerful on the market, and really the best cargo motor on the market from our experience. They made some nice updates to that motor from the previous version, so it's a little bit more peppy off the line, and it's really got plenty of power. I should also note that it's probably better to go with a slightly faster cadence on this type of system than trying to just like power through everything with the slower cadence. Sure, the motor can handle it and it can make up for it, but you're really not going to be as efficient. But let's check out the motor from the other side. You can see the integration a little bit better, and we could talk a little bit more about that. They did a really nice integration here. This is the Generation 4 cargo line system. It uses technology called pedal assist. Basically means that you pedal the bike, it provides assistance as you ride. It takes up to 1,000 senses per second. It's really pretty advanced and intuitive. I think most people find that it's one of the easier systems to operate because it kind of does exactly what you want it to do. You don't really have to think much about it, and it's very safe in that regard as well, because all you really have to do is pedal the bike like you normally would. You just feel kind of stronger than you would, which certainly helpful, especially in the case of having a good amount of cargo on the bike. So this new motor is a little bit lighter than the previous version, a little bit more torque, up to 85 Newton meters, up from 63 and 75 on the CX motor. The new Bosch motor also makes it a little bit easier to pedal without power, so if that's something important to you, you might want to consider moving in this direction. The motor works with a couple different sensors. So they have 3 sensors. One is sensing how fast you're pedaling. It's also sensing how hard you're pedaling. And then last, there's a sensor on the rear wheel that senses actually how fast the bike is going overall. I should also note there's a slight update to the sensor in the rear wheel, where it's actually integrated into the brake rotor, where previously it was mounted on the spoke. This is a little bit more of an advanced sensor. It's able to sense more often and usually give you a slightly better experience there. So that's a nice update there as well, and maybe it's also less likely to get, hit or kind of move out of place, because it's pretty much locked in place in that regard. So definitely appreciate that. Since this is the S00 LX, it comes standard with a single 500 watt-hour battery pack, and that'll generally get you on average somewhere around 30 or 40 miles. You can get upwards of 60 or so miles if you're riding in the lower levels of assistance, maybe with not much of a load. But if you're riding in a high level assist with a really heavy load, you might get as low as 15, 20 miles. Now you do have the option to add an additional battery. The mount for the second battery does come standard, but if you wanted to actually double your range, you can pay an additional $800 and get you there. The R14 version comes standard with 2 batteries, and then the standard S10 version comes standard with a single 400 watt-hour battery, but you also have that option to add the 500 watt-hour. They stick with the 400 watt-hour on that bike just to keep the price point down a little bit, but it's it's still a great system, and same form factor, everything like that. You can switch it through different bikes and everything like that. It's definitely a nice setup in that regard. While we're down here, I just wanted to show you the kickstand. So to activate the kickstand, you just push it down with your foot and just pull the bike back a little bit, and it locks in place. So if I try to push this back and forth, it's not really going anywhere, and it's pretty sturdy here. Now, if I wanted to put the kickstand back in its up position, I'm going to push the lever, which is going to pull this right here. So that's what the lever is doing up by the handlebars. Push this and then just push it forward, and that's really it. So I should note that this kickstand comes standard, and that's part of one of the details that makes this newer version a little bit more expensive than the older version, but it's a really nice upgrade. I should also note, many people are probably going to ask, can I put this on my Generation 1 GSD? Unfortunately, that is not an option on that bike. So to turn the bike on, we just hit the power button on the top of the display. This bike has the Purion display, as with most other models, with the exception of the R14, which has the Intuvia display, slightly larger. They opted for that one, partly because that is one display that works with the roll-off electronic shifting. The other displays would be compatible with these bikes as well, with the exception that the smartphone hub is not compatible with the roll-off electronic shifting. So could be a possibility to potentially change the display, but it's a bit of a job, and this one works just fine, and it's pretty practical for this sort of setup, especially with some of the folding features and stuff like that. But to turn it on, you just turn it on. Here you have the speedometer. Right now it's set to kilometers per hour. We could change it to miles per hour. You have the range. The range is going to be based on what assistance level you're on. So actually right now we're on turbo mode. If we go, this is off mode, is just riding like a normal non-electric bike. If I go to the first mode, eco, it shows 61 kilometers. And if you go up to the higher levels of assistance, you can see that the range is going to go down a little bit. So that's going to update automatically, which is a nice feature. If I hold the minus button down, I can cycle through these different options. You can just see the assist level you're in. You can see the trip mode. If you wanted to reset the trip, you can hold the plus and minus button down for a couple of seconds, and it will reset that. Hold it down again. We're going to get the odometer, total amount of kilometers on the bike. So probably about 7 miles there, 11 kilometers, and then we're back into the range mode. Outside of that, that's most of the functions on here. This is a sample, but by default the lights should be actually on all the time, but then you have a switch to turn the lights, the headlight on and off. But since this has the brake lights, they should always be on in theory for that safety feature. But for this, I'm just going to turn it on just by holding that plus button down for a couple of seconds. And now we have the brake lights activated. So we have a wire that comes from the brake lever, and if we just pull the brake lever, it's just going to activate that brake. If I wanted to turn the headlight on, I have this button right here to turn the headlight on. And then this one, the LX version, has the high beam and low beam, which I can just tap this button in the front to activate that high beam and low beam. So pretty powerful light, 700 lumens, really nice setup. So the one other detail I'd like to show you on the display is walk assist. You need to be in an assist level, but this walk assist just makes it easier to push the bike along, or you're pushing it up a hill or something like that when you're not riding it. You just tap this walk button and then you hold the plus button, and that will activate the walk assist. So this has the NVOLO cargo line shifter on there. It's really heavy duty. I should note that you can only go about half the rotation without pedaling. You can shift the system while you're not pedaling, which is really nice. The roll-off, you can do that as well. The roll-off actually will shift down automatically when you come to a stop, and then you're going to shift up manually with the buttons on there. So nice system there, a little bit wider gear range. I should note the gear range on the NVOLO is 380%. The Dior 10-speed derailleur is going to be a little bit below that, probably not too much of a difference there, but then the roll-off has 526% gear range, so that really gives you plenty of low-end power or low-end gears, as well as the really high top-end gears. So if you're living in a very hilly environment, that could be helpful. But really, any of the drivetrains are great options and nice things to consider there. So you can see the brake levers here. These are the MT5E, and specifically E because they have this special wire here which will activate the brake light. So you can actually even activate the brake light with actually not pulling the brake all the way. But the standard S10 version is not going to have the brake light. It's just going to be the standard MT5 brakes. Still the same stopping power, amazing stopping power, but this one is the LX version and will have the electronic switch for the brake, which is a nice upgrade there. For the brakes on the bike, we have the Magura MT5. The S10 version has the standard MT5, and this has the MT5E. Basically, the E just adds the electronic switch for the brake levers to activate the brake light. So this is, since it's an LX version, it does come standard with that E version. The calipers and levers are the same otherwise, and you're going to have a 180 millimeter rotor in the front and a 180 in the rear. So plenty of stopping power. These are a quad piston caliper, so really nice modulation to them, and it's a pretty heavy duty system, very appropriate for this heavy duty bike. So I wanted to show some of the new accessories. This is the Clubhouse Plus. Slightly different from the previous generation of the Clubhouse, partly because it's a bit more modular. So you have this interchangeable rear arm to it, so you can actually put this extension on. So this is specifically works well if you wanted to put 2 child seats. Normally the standard Clubhouse, you can't put 2 child seats, it's just not long enough. This does have that ability with this extension, so you just pull these bolts out here and swap this out, and you have that ability to accommodate something a bit longer there. The pads are a little bit different as well, so they're velcroed on, same as before, but twice as thick, so a little bit better at accommodating maybe heavier riders. And this setup's a little bit different, probably a little bit easier to adapt to different setups, different seating options, which is really nice. I'll also show you the bags here. I'm just going to drop this in the new cargo bags here. The same fitty lock system here. We just pull this open, and really large capacity bag, and it's nice. It even kind of stands up a little bit on its own, but if you want, you can make them into like just kind of a big bucket. This might be nice if you have passengers in the back. They can actually just put their feet right into this bag area, which is kind of nice. And then if you want, you can reattach these straps here. So really good capacity. These will work on the Gen 1 GSDs as well. And if you're not using them, if you want, you can really fold them up pretty good like this. And so you can see that they can get pretty tight there. Might be nicer, if you have a passenger, if you're not using the bags. I probably would run them in this position, but you can see it's pretty quick to adapt them to these different positions. So whatever setup you might like to run with there. These are the lower extensions, better for, an adult or something like that. And this bike will just the same fit the captain's chair, which we did a video on that. So you can see a little bit of that setup. That's probably the ideal setup if you wanted to carry larger passengers. This is really ideal for smaller passengers, kids, that sort of thing. They made a nice update to the saddle with the larger handle here. This is really nice if you have some passengers that you don't really want to put the sidekick bars or use the Clubhouse or something like that. You just want someone to sit on the back and then just have something to hold on to. They don't have to hold on to you. They can hold on to here. And, some smaller hands, you can probably fit 2 hands, but one, larger hand makes it a little bit easier to accommodate there. And I think it's a nice update and just nice finish on that. Well, I hope you guys found this video to be helpful. If you have any questions about this or you have comments, maybe you have some feedback based on your experience with a current GSD you might own or what you've ridden or that sort of thing, leave them in the comments below, and we'll do our best to answer those comments. And if you have any questions or are interested in pre-ordering one, you could reach out to us. We're certainly happy to help with that. As I said, the bike's probably going to be available the end of this year, early next year. And we look forward to seeing you in a future video. Well, see you soon.